Prince William moved against Queen Camilla's sister. By the time anyone inside the palace understood what he had done, it was already permanent. What began as a routine audit ended with a legal structure that no royal prerogative could ever touch again. But the person who made all of it possible had been gone for nearly 4 years. What the public saw was a brooch recovered from a private home. What was actually happening was something else entirely. A reckoning that had been set in motion long before anyone realized a trap had been laid. On June 10, 2026, a court-authorized task force arrived at a private home in southwest London. They walked out carrying a national treasure: the Sapphire Jubilee Snowflake brooch. In 2017, the Government of Canada commissioned this brooch to honor 65 years of Queen Elizabeth's reign. Rare beluga sapphires. Diamonds. One of a kind. The entire point of a gift like that is that it does not belong to the Queen personally. It belongs to the Crown. It enters the Royal Collection Trust. It is catalogued, protected, and passed down. That is how state diplomatic gifts legally work in the United Kingdom. The person whose home the task force walked into was Laura Lopez, Camilla's daughter. A private citizen. Somehow, during the chaos following Queen Elizabeth's death in 2022, the brooch had left a restricted archive and arrived at a private residential address. No paperwork. No authorization. No sign of transfer. In early 2026, an independent audit revealed the brooch was missing. The trail led directly to Laura Lopez. Under British civil law, unauthorized possession of public property is illegal. Laura had no legal justification for holding that brooch. And when that audit report landed, Camilla understood immediately what was coming. This was not a family matter. This was a case for law enforcement. Camilla reached for the most powerful instrument available to her. But what she did not know is that someone had already anticipated exactly that move. The mechanism built to stop it had been waiting, sealed, and silent for nearly 5 years. William signed documents his legal office had prepared 6 days earlier. No cameras. No announcement. By the time most people inside the palace had finished their morning coffee, something permanent had already happened. Camilla learned through her lawyers. Not from William. Not from a private secretary. She had not been consulted. She had not been warned. That absence of warning was not accidental. It was the message: Charles was at Sandringham recovering from medical treatment. Operating on a reduced schedule. Not holding full daily briefings. No statement emerged from his office. No correction. No countermand. The silence from Sandringham was as significant as anything filed in a courtroom. Princess Anne had known what was coming for days. She had carried the documents to Kensington Palace. She laid everything out. The audit report. The sealed instructions. She did what she came to do. And then she returned to her schedule without a word to anyone else. No calls to Camilla's office. No quiet warning. No attempt to soften what was about to land. When Anne chooses silence, it is because she has already decided that silence is the correct response. In the summer of 2021, roughly 14 months before her death, Queen Elizabeth quietly commissioned a set of sealed administrative instructions. They were filed privately. They carried instructions that they be opened only in the event of a formal governance dispute. What those instructions established was precise. Governance responsibility for the collection would pass to the heir apparent. Not to the sitting monarch's spouse. Not to the Queen Consort. To the heir apparent. Elizabeth was making certain that when the transition came, there was a legal instrument in place that put the collection's future in William's hands. Not in Camilla's. Only 4 people were present when those instructions were witnessed and sealed. One of them was Princess Anne. Camilla's team prepared a Crown private transfer order. The argument was that Charles, as successor, could dispose of the brooch as a personal gift. If valid, Laura Lopez would no longer be holding stolen property. The criminal exposure disappears. The fatal flaw? State diplomatic gifts are not personal property. The Canadian government donated that brooch to the Crown as an institution, not to Elizabeth as a private individual. That distinction is settled in British property law. Camilla's team knew this. They were betting the argument would never reach a courtroom. In late May 2026, Charles was at Sandringham recovering. Not at full capacity. Camilla's team prepared a briefing document. It described the transfer order as a routine administrative correction. Standard procedure. The word audit did not appear. The phrase criminal liability did not appear. The name of the independent body that flagged the discrepancy did not appear. Charles signed what he was given. He had no reason to doubt it. There is a difference between a spouse using her husband's authority and deliberately misleading a vulnerable man into signing a legal instrument he did not understand. That distinction matters enormously. Anne was the one who opened that envelope. She read the Crown private transfer order. She did not forward it. She set it aside, pulled the original audit report, and then reached for a third document. The sealed instructions from 2021. What she found was not ambiguous. The briefing document for Sandringham had described the transfer as routine. The audit, the criminal liability, absent entirely. Anne drove to Kensington Palace that evening with 3 documents. William was briefed before midnight. The legal team came back within 48 hours. The answer was unambiguous. A sovereign act cannot be legally binding if the sovereign was materially misled about its purpose at the time of signing. The Crown private transfer order had no legal standing. From June 4 to June 10, William moved with speed and precision. 6 days. No leaks. No warnings. On June 10, William transferred the most significant assets of the royal collection into a newly constituted independent body called the Royal Heritage Trust. The legal instrument was a deed of perpetual settlement. Perpetual. Settled. Done. The assets were placed permanently beyond the reach of royal prerogative. No individual, not the king, not the queen consort, could unilaterally remove them. The trust answers to the Charity Commission, not the palace. Under English charity law, a deed of perpetual settlement cannot be dissolved without a court order and consent of all named beneficiaries. The named beneficiaries are the British public. No royal prerogative instrument can touch it. The door was closed. The assets transferred were those designated to the heir apparent under Elizabeth's sealed instructions from 2021. Those instructions predated the current reign. They granted William custodial authority independent of whoever was sitting on the throne. Charles's approval was not legally required. Elizabeth had made certain of that 14 months before she died. On June 16, Camilla's private secretary arrived at a meeting with the trustee board. He came prepared to negotiate. The trustees told him there was nothing to negotiate. The deed had been filed. The assets had been transferred. The framework was settled. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes is not a negotiation. It is a door being closed politely, but without hesitation. Camilla's legal team filed for an emergency stay of the recovery order. The application was dismissed the same day. The judge ruled the deed had been executed in accordance with instruments predating the current reign. Within 10 days, 2 senior members of Camilla's household staff resigned. A scheduled visit was cancelled. A planned profile was pulled. These were people reading the room and drawing their own conclusions. On June 22, Catherine arrived at the Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group reception. She wore the sapphire Jubilee snowflake brooch on her shoulder. No announcement. No explanation. She simply wore it. Several delegations present were Canadian. The people whose government had commissioned that brooch. To an outsider, it looked like a jewelry choice. In the world of royal symbolism, it was confirmation. The brooch was back. Exactly where it was supposed to be. Camilla was not at the reception. Her absence carried its own meaning. The footage spread quickly. Questions led directly to the story. The palace never had to tell it themselves. On June 25, the Royal Heritage Trust was formally constituted. 7 independent trustees appointed. None held royal appointments. One of those trustees was Canadian. a direct message to the Canadian government. The Trust's formation was published in the London Gazette on June 26. What enters its pages cannot be altered or removed. Camilla's legal team explored whether a challenge was possible. The advice was unambiguous. The Privy Council has no jurisdiction. Every door was closed. This story is not really about a brooch. The brooch was almost incidental. What this story is actually about is a question. Do the informal protections that come with proximity to the royal family apply to everyone equally? For decades, the answer suited certain people. Camilla understood that better than anyone. What she discovered on June 10 is that those tools had an expiration date she never knew about. Set by a woman who had been gone for nearly 4 years. Elizabeth's sealed instructions from 2021 were not drafted in response to any specific threat. She wrote them because she understood something fundamental about power. It does not announce its corruption. It accumulates quietly. Elizabeth built the mechanism that made William's move legally possible. That may be the most consequential thing she ever did for the institution. What Elizabeth built in silence, William carried forward in silence. And for the first time in a very long time, the institution did exactly what it was supposed to. Subscribe to the Meghan Markle Report for more royal stories you won't hear anywhere else. Drop your thoughts below. Did Elizabeth set the trap or did William? I read every single comment. See you in the next one.